Hi everyone, good morning and welcome to this week's webinar. I'll just, any of you can come, any of you can.
Hi.
How's it going here?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'll show you my face there now.
There we
Hello.
go. Hi, great. I'm just doing a quick intro. So welcome to everyone to this week's webinar. I think it's our 16th webinar this year. We would have normally run these face-to-face across some counties in Ireland, but we've gone remote quite successfully now, and it's been great because the attendees can be a much bigger number, obviously, online. My name is Helen Walsh. I am one of the flexible work specialists at Employflex, and I'll be hosting today along with our guest speaker, Niamh Brady. Today is day one of some new restrictions, and my mother earlier told me that it's 40 days exactly until December 1st. So, you know, we can do it, and it's nice to kind of have a deadline, and hopefully the country as a whole will behave, and there'll be some form of normality back for Christmas. If you have been job seeking, or if you are looking at upskilling, we have some information around that. We have seen a pickup probably just since the start of September in terms of work, and companies who were quite nervous at maybe just paused a lot back in March and April, who are now back and hiring again, because I think they're realizing this is here to stay, some form of the remote or the hybrid work. Yeah, so that's positive news. It's great to kind of, you know, I made a job offer yesterday. It was lovely. You know, it looked like a girl that had just started a new job in February and then was laid off immediately March 13th. So, you know, it's nice to deliver some of that good news right now. Niamh Brady, our guest speaker, the topic and the timing could not be more perfect. Niamh is an author, productivity coach, and but I've heard her speak before, and I've started referring to her as no nonsense Niamh, because it's just so practical. There's no, you will without a doubt walk away from today with some easy to implement takeaways. And what I love about it is Niamh, you know, addresses all other elements. She's not addressing just, as she said to me when we had a chat yesterday, the task at hand. It's all the other elements. We're all juggling something. We all have a bit of a COVID anxiety still over our heads, whether we're worrying about a parent or, you know, worrying about kids in school and all of that. So Niamh has a very holistic approach to all of that in her winter essentials. I'll just see if I can tell you a little bit about ourselves. Employee mum and Employflex, recruitment and training now is what we do. We do a lot of. Karen, our founder, has been quite busy doing a lot of Zoom, quite a lot of, you know, how to manage teams remote type of training over the last 6 months. This 5,000 candidates, that was just new since COVID. We've always been in the 4,000 plus candidates, but I mean, one of the positives for us is that the caliber of candidates we have registered with us right now is so high. Some people are no longer working, so they're very actively job searching. These free back to workshops, which we run regularly and continue to do so. We work with some partner companies on returnships. We are always lobbying for flexible work in Ireland. We're keynote speakers and, you know, featured a lot, especially this year, really on national media around remote work. And yeah, and we do a lot of surveys, and we, you know, check in. And, you know, I think the great thing about our surveys, it's very Irish and it's very current and it's very real, rather than some of these other surveys we see out there that are more worldwide, whereas this is more, you know, very usable data for some of our clients. Now I'll tell you about Niamh, our guest speakers. So Niamh is a productivity coach, and most recently an author as well. She helps people achieve their goals and improves work-life balance. Her interest in productivity began when she started her first job after college, given a laptop, a phone, but really no advice and tips on how to manage her time and workload. Niamh now combines productivity methods with over a decade of experience in project management and operations to deliver a practical, straightforward approach through coaching and a Better Workday program, which she uses. She's also the author of Remote Working Essentials, which is a guide for anyone who's looking to improve how they work from home. And as I mentioned, I've heard Niamh speak, so I'm very confident that she will walk away with some fantastic takeaways today. Just some housekeeping. There's a Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, so feel free to add any questions as they come to you, and we will address those at the end. And I'll hand it over to you, Niamh.
Great, thanks, Helen. And I love the no nonsense, Niamh. I may, in fact, keep that as one of my taglines. So, welcome everyone. I am really happy that you took the time this morning to listen to us and to get some advice on remote working through winter 2020. I am going to share my screen, but guess what? It's nothing really detailed. It's nothing at all complex. So if you want to turn off the monitor, stand up, look around, step away from the screen, I won't be offended. Sure, I won't even know. But we'll go through it, and then, as Helen said, at the end, I'll answer any and all questions that you might have. So let me try, and Helen, you're going to have to allow me to share my screen, which would be...
Apologies.
Yeah, thank you. The joys of remote webinars.
Oops, sorry, Niamh.
That's all right.
Where's your name? Find your name out again. You're in my fun list. Oh yeah, make. Sorry, I made you a panelist rather than a co-host. So there you go. Now the option should have opened up for you there.
Yeah, there you go now. So bear with us. Share screen. Now, so today we are talking about remote working, winter 2020 essentials. And Helen, you can just confirm that you can see that.
I can, Niamh. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Great. So what we're going to cover is the 6 essential questions for winter 2020 when it comes to working from home. And this really applies to anybody who's working from home or who's looking to start a new job that might be remote, okay? Because even though some of us might have worked from home last winter for maybe a day or a couple of days, this is a different environment because of, I suppose, the fact we're all doing it, and we've got other factors at play. So this is specifically for this winter 2020, and it's to help you to have a better work day from home. And with that in mind, I would just like to say there is no such thing as a perfect work day. There's no such thing as 100% positivity all of the time. All we look for is to have a better day and to do our best. So, no high expectations here, just a good sprinkle of reality. So the 6 questions are who, what, when, where, why, and how. Very original, I know, but these are the most effective questions you can ask yourself, and will give you all the answers that you need. So the first question is who? Who else do we need to consider when you're working from home? And this is really important, guys, as we go into the winter, because the first period of working remotely included, kids being at home and a lot more people being furloughed than this time around. So you might have a slightly quieter household, but that's not to say that you still need to be considerate of other people. So as Helen alluded to earlier, you might still be looking after maybe older parents or relatives. You might actually have other housemates who are working from home, sharing the same space as you. But remember also you have your teammates who, although you can't sit next to them, they're all working remotely as well. So the recent research published by the Wishker Institute has shown that one of the top reasons now, or one of the top challenges now rather, of working from home is loneliness. And that's different because it wasn't there in April. And as we look to the winter, loneliness can definitely creep in, just with the nature of the shorter days and the colder weather and the fact that we won't be out much. So really, when you're looking who else you need to consider maybe friends, family, but also teammates that might be feeling a bit lonely and that you might want to reach out to. I'd also say that if you reach out to people and offer a bit of help, not only does it help combat loneliness, but it actually improves your motivation, because when we help each other, we're doing stuff beyond just the task, right? It's beyond just work. It gives us more purpose, and that really helps to keep us going when we're not in the office. So my tip for you here is, do you remember those people you used to have a coffee with, that didn't work in your team and you didn't see them that often, but every now and again you'd bump into them and you'd have a good chat? Reach out to them. Reach out to them today, just check in how they're doing and have a chat. And really start to build that into your days and weeks over the winter to make sure you stay connected and you help others as well. So really, when you're thinking of who else to consider, yeah, it's your kids, your partner, housemates, other family, but also think of your teammates, think of your manager, and think of those work friends, if that makes sense. So the people are the most important piece, but once we have those taken care of, let's get on to the logistics. So what equipment do you need? Now, I know if there's people here who have been working from home since March, you might be saying, Niamh, I have everything. I have my monitor, I have my chair, I have my desk. But the winter is different, okay? So do you have enough clothing? Do you have comfy clothes? Do you have a heater in your room if you need it? Do you have an extra lamp? Do you have pens and post-its and sticky notes and paper and all those things that you need? The stuff beyond the tech to help you work comfortably from home. My personal favorite, do you have a hot water bottle? Because if you're sitting at your desk and you don't have that office heating and all those people around you, you will get chilly. So make a list of the things, the physical things that could make your working from home day more comfortable, and go about getting those for yourself over the next couple of weeks, and even, I suppose, sourcing them from other parts of the house. This will just make sure that when you are working, you're set up in a comfortable way and you're set up for success. So yeah, technical equipment, but also all those non-tech things. And you'll see here in my slide, I've included stuff like a footstool, a lumbar support, wrist supports. They're the kind of things that are small and you might have thought, I don't really need them. But look, we're going to be moving less in the winter as well. So let's make sure that if you do need anything like that, that you get it, because it makes all the difference. Okay, so who and what, and next comes when. When will you work from home? Well, all the time, you might say, and well, that's true. But I'm talking more about the routines. So when will you start and when will you finish? So there's a company that analysed over 3 million people using their login activity and found that we're working an average 1 hour extra every day. That's a half a day a week. Okay, and we have to be mindful of that, because that can creep into 2 hours, 3 hours, and 4 hours. And next thing you'll be wondering why you're burnt out. Okay, so some of us will have very flexible jobs that we might be able to start and end at different times. I would say even if you have flexibility, boundaries are still important. So put your own routine in place. And if you are the type of person who's in a team that has to be, logged in at a certain time and clock off at a certain time, make sure that you have a way of switching off at the end. So some things I'd say are start on time, take your breaks, and finish on time. A great way to make sure you finish on time is to have a checklist that you go through at the end of every day that confirms that you have done enough work. So for example, if you are working on a project, you will have written down at the start of the day the 3 things that you want to achieve. At the end of the day, you cross those 3 things off and you know you are done. If you are in a more responsive role, like maybe customer support or tech support, stuff like that, there's certain things you have to have done before you finish every day. So maybe tickets are all updated, and you have all of your emails checked, and you know what's priority 1 for the next morning. Check, 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 and finish. I also suggest that you take your breaks and get a walk in most days. Now, this is something that we have to do in the wintertime, right? Because it's dark in the morning and dark in the evening. But let me remind you of something, okay? There are some of you watching this that even when we were in the office, you'd get into the car in the dark, you'd drive in the dark, you'd arrive to your office, you'd have your head in the computer all day or on meetings or whatever. You'd drive home in the dark and you wouldn't see the daylight anyway, okay? So let's take remote working really here as an opportunity to get that daylight in. And what I recommend, especially for those of us who are on the clock, to make your lunch in the morning so that you can eat it at lunchtime and leave the rest of the time to get the walk in, instead of, prepping the lunch and eating the lunch and then the time is up. So when will you work from home, especially in the winter? Routine is important, boundaries are important. start on time, take your breaks, and use a checklist to make sure that you finish on time and avoid that burnout. Where will you work? So many of us wouldn't have had bought our house or moved into our rented accommodation with a home office in mind. Okay, and there are some of us who are working with other people in the house as well. And we would have found a spot back in March and April that did the job. But again, the winter is a little bit different. So the weather is colder, the house could be draftier, there's less natural light. So it actually is worth your while taking a look at where you work now and asking yourself, is this the best place for me to work through the winter time? You know, does it have enough natural light if you can get it? Is it warm or is it drafty? And all of those things. And one thing I would say here as well is that when you're thinking about where will you work, consider maybe changing up location if you can. And maybe if there's 2 or more of you, that you swap locations every couple of days, just to put a bit of variety into it. So for example, this is my home office. I work here most days, but then there's other days that I work from my kitchen table. And it's literally just to break it up, just so that I'm looking at different things, because that's good for our heads, and it also inspires new thinking and creativity. So if I was to suggest you do one thing today, it's to take a look at the space around you, and you and consider, do you want to work somewhere else? Now I'm seeing, by the way, some questions coming in already, which is brilliant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the next piece of it, and then we will answer those questions. And I have allowed plenty of time, by the way, for questions. Why? This is the most important question that we need to ask ourselves today. And this is the key, I suppose, to keeping ourselves focused and as positive as we can over the next couple of weeks. Why do you want to work from home? Or why is working from home good in the winter? And the reason I say this is so important is because usually, if you're working remotely, it's because you wanted to, for reasons other than a global pandemic. Okay, it feels like more of your choice usually. Okay, and what we need to do is realize that a lot of this still is within our own control, and we do still have a choice. Like, we're all choosing to work from home so that we can help each other and get through this together, and look forward to all, you know, meeting up at the end of it, right? We could choose not to and put other people at risk and everything that goes with it. So this is still a choice, although it's definitely a more difficult one. So if we can discover the good, or remember the good of working from home during the winter, and maybe find a bit of gratitude for that, that actually brings it back into our space. It brings it back into our control, okay? And allows us then to focus on the work, right? And living well. So for me, I don't like driving in the dark, and I don't like driving in the ice. And when I work from home, I don't have to. I can walk my dogs during the daytime when I work from home. If I was in the office, I couldn't do it. Because I don't have to drop my daughter Emily off to her childcare and then go to work, I've got extra time, which means I can make a nice hot cozy breakfast through the winter. These are my benefits. So I'm excluding COVID, right? I'm choosing to say I have my own reasons that working from home is good for me in the winter. And if you do nothing else as a result of this webinar, write down the good, write down the positives of you working from home over the next couple of months, and maybe stick them on a sticky note in front of your desk, or put them somewhere that will remind you, so that when you are getting distracted, and when those thoughts of, you know, I don't like this and I want to be back in the office, or it's difficult, start interrupting you, that you can bring back to the good. Because there's always, I believe, some good. Now, of course, I'm a productivity coach, right? And we haven't really talked much about the work now. I'm sure we haven't. And the reason is because if we don't have everything else in place, there's no point even trying to do the work, right? So if you don't have the people that are important to you looked after, and if you're not asking for help when you need it, if you don't have a comfortable environment, and if you can't find that positive and get into that positive mindset, you're just not going to be able to work effectively from home. But there is still obviously a little bit of work stuff to be covered. One slide though, that's all. So what? What will be different? And this is different now if you're starting a new job or going to a new job, and if you're working already. And I know that we'd have a mix of people on this audience. So if you're applying for new jobs, and if you start a new job remotely, whereas before you'd been in the office, just in the first week or so, jot down what's different to when you would have worked in the office. So maybe you find it easier because you get interrupted less, but you also find it more difficult to reach out to people who you don't know. Maybe you find it easier to get through long pieces of work, or perhaps you notice that you're getting distracted. And just making a note of those things and being aware of them is a really good step. And an excellent step after that is just to write down one thing that you can do differently the following week to address it. Okay, so it might be getting a buddy, it might be using something that I call the Pomodoro. Well, I don't call it, it is called the Pomodoro technique, where you work for 25-minute blocks, which is good if you get distracted easily. It could be anything, okay? But definitely acknowledging that it is different is very important. If you've already been working from home, challenge yourself to think, what one thing have I not been doing great actually over the last couple of months, that, you know what, this is my opportunity to change. I'm going to do one thing differently. So maybe you have been logging onto your laptop too early. Maybe you've been getting swallowed up in emails, which has stopped you from getting your work done. Maybe you have forgotten to ask for help. And you've been struggling and you're going to do that. Whatever it is, I know that there's something simple that everyone can do to have a better work from home day. And why not do it, right? What's the harm? Now, the last thing I would say with what will be different is we need to also acknowledge what will be the same. So try and remember this now in a couple of weeks when you're having a bad day at work, right, from home, and you're not in the mood for work, and you're blaming COVID, and you're blaming your internet connectivity, and you're blaming the work, and you're blaming everything, right? And you're like, if only I was in the office, this would be fine. Yes, there are some things which are different, but there are some things that are the same. And that is that we will always have good and bad days. We always have good habits and not so good habits. And that's just kind of part of life. So like, if you were bad at checking your email every 5 minutes in the office, you're probably still going to be bad at it when you're working from home. You know what I mean? So try to just be a little bit honest with yourself and go, oh yeah, that's just me. And what that does is it stops you focusing on remote working in a negative way. Just go, this is just a way of working right now. And maybe you're going to address one of those things as well. Okay, so maybe you're going to do two things, which is brilliant. So let's recap. Who? The most important thing is who. Who do you need to consider? Who can you help? Who do you need help from? What equipment do you need? What things do you need to make your working from home day more comfortable as we enter into the winter? Do you own a hot water bottle? When are you going to work from home? Do you have a routine? Are you taking your breaks? Do you know how to switch off? Do you have that checklist which lets you know that the day is done? Where do you need to switch up where you're working? Either because it's not serving you or just because you need a variety. Why? Let's find the good in it, okay, guys? Let's find reasons it's good to be working from home during those cold winter days. Okay, maybe one of you is going to light the fire and work in front of the fire for a little while, and that be cozy if you can. And then what? Let's focus on the work now that we've everything else in place, okay? What's going to be different? And what steps can you take to address that so that you can have a better work day from home? Now, I told Helen that I'd be on about 20 minutes because I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. And Helen, I think I did a pretty good job, because next slide is questions.
You did indeed, Niamh. Thanks a million. You're spot on. You're practicing what you preach in terms of productivity and time efficiencies. Listen, thanks a million. Lots of really good takeaways there. I'm going to go through some of my own notes there before we start on the questions. I love that, just the who you said about helping others and giving motivation, and just a simple thing I did this morning. As soon as my kids got on the school bus, I just posted letters for a neighbour. They were just under pressure, and they're like, the stamps are on them. Is there any chance you're popping out? And I actually had no need to pop out. But of course I can. Just something simple. And it was actually really good. A little bit of fresh air out back in the office by 9:05. And it's something very simple, something simple. The equipment, I was laughing because I was telling Karen, I have a lap blanket right now. The temperatures have very much dropped. And yeah, I'm in a converted attic here and it's chilly. So yeah, hot water bottle, great idea. Let's do that. And you're mentioning about lighting as well, because I realized, there's been lots of I've been on some calls in the evenings during the summer, and just last week my lighting was a disaster when I was on a call at 7 p.m. So that was a good reminder for me. One thing I actually invested in, now I've been working hybrid, half remote, half in the office since 2017, but I invested in a stand-up at one of those IKEA stand-up or sit-down desks, and I must say it's been brilliant. I make myself at least stand up, and you can keep the feet moving, and if sometimes it's good for that more critical conversation you need to have. It gives you that more of a boost when you're standing up. So
yeah.
If you are going to be in it for remote working longer, it's quite a good investment if you do have the space.
And actually on that one, Helen, I didn't have the space for that, so I got a standing desk topper that I literally just put on top of my own desk. Yeah, okay. So it takes up no space. It's like 30 quid on Amazon. So start the morning with that, and then I just take it off and it's done. Yeah,
that's what I do. I do a half and a half, kind of mix it up as well. That's a great idea. I'd say there's been some great inventions and
I'd say so.
renaming of products to fit in with the current reality. Yeah, the 1 hour extra a day, that's kind of frightening, the stats, but you could totally see it happening. And I think more important now than ever, with the clocks changing this coming weekend, that people, I think you have to look after, make sure you get that bit of fresh air, a bit of some form of downtime when it's not dark, ideally. I was laughing at the checklist at the end of the day, because I'm brutal. I'm brutal at doing the easy stuff at the start. We talk about eating the frog, and I'm like, oh God, what I'll end up doing is moving that job on that task onto the next day. So must definitely embrace that a bit more. And the wear, mixing it up, that's a good idea. Like, I'm in an office here now, I kind of move over here to the blank and the branded wall, but the standing up desk is larger over there with a lot more access to books and all that. And even that little simple rotation can just mix it up. And the gratitude for being able to work, I think that's the thing. We can easily harp on and blame COVID for any lack of productivity, it's very easy to put on, be all miserable, but and it's funny, I've been phone interviewing and phone screening lots of people, and then my clients come back and they say they often ask candidates who are job seeking, how have you coped this year? Everyone's had their own thing, and like they tell me they're asking that question because they want a positive. They don't want, oh, I was miserable, I had to do this and this, because we all have that answer too, but we also could say, I actually did this, or I attended some events, or I did some free course online, or whatever it is. So I think you can you can have two very different approaches to that. And the Pomodoro technique, actually, Karen O'Reilly, our founder, is a big fan of that, and I haven't heard that in a while. And what else did you say? Oh yeah, always good days and the bad days. And we do, irrespective of where you're working, the good and the bad habits. So that was a good reminder of those too. And exactly, they're going to still exist wherever your work brings you. So Niamh, thanks a million. I am going to start asking you some of the questions there.
Okay.
I'll call them out to you. And
brace myself. Here we go.
Like some of these questions might you know, I might have an answer to as well. So first one, my office is not a separate space as I have no room in my small home. Have you any advice on switching off at the end of the day?
Okay, so controversial now, I know, right? But I obviously didn't always have a home office, but I always work from home a little bit. So now this is just my routine, okay? But I literally got a blanket and put it over the workspace when I finished to physically hide it. Because if you see it, it's still there, okay? So I literally would finish the day, get the blanket, chuck it over, go upstairs, have a shower, and wash off the day so that I could actually physically separate from the space. Now, I don't know if this person actually wants to put a blanket over their stuff, but it's literally, maybe you want to put like a bunch of flowers in front of it or a few photos, but actually hide it and then find a way to physically disconnect. So either by jumping in the shower or walking out the front door, taking a 5-minute nap and coming back in. Something like that might actually help.
I like that. That's a good.
And not expensive either. Yeah.
Blankets, and we all have one. I'm sure we all have one.
Yeah, we all have a winter blanket. Do you know what I mean? It goes from your lap onto the machine at the end of the day.
That's it. I know other people now would just like have a simple like, you know, work clothes kind of, you know, even if they're not really in work clothes, even if it's just throw on a hoodie as opposed to whatever you're wearing or just something else simple like that. But yeah, I know that there's the temptation or the drawback to the office. Yeah.
The physical,
so,
yeah.
So I like that. It's a good tip. Another question here, Niamh, on the communication tool Slack. I'm not sure if you've used it much yourself. So what are your own thoughts on that?
I have cutthroat with my Slack. So I have muted 99% of the channels. I have turned off all notifications and I check it at the same time I check my email and I give it my full attention. So now, I will say that some teams actually use Slack with more urgency. So this answer is, you know, if Slack is a non-urgent and non-essential tool, right? But the way I would say it is, you should never open your email or open Slack if you don't have the time to fully read what's being asked and to actually answer it. So if you want to check your Slack and email once an hour, then check it once an hour. If it's twice a day, check it twice a day. But especially for things like that, hide all the channels, mute anything that's not important, and be cutthroat, and then just kind of allow what's important to you come in. Remember, like what I always say is, tools are there to support you, not burden you. And if it's starting to be a burden, it's not a tool. So you have to take back control. Remember, you're the human, they're the machine.
I like that. Tools are there to support you, not burden you. I like that. I've used Slack myself a lot. During the summer, I was just involved in a little bit of work with ROWE Remote, who were big fans of it. But like that, you could get bombarded, and I definitely mute it because the notifications would come left, right, and center. And then I know other companies that would use Slack specifically for that water cooler moments, just for the more informal chats, and not the, you know, you can just, they're doing everything else through some of the other official channels. But Slack is great. Like what I've seen is very kind of collaborative and supportive. Is some of the team I was involved in where they were sharing a job. They're like, oh, they might have kind of indirectly met somebody on a networking event or something and didn't really know them very well, but shared it here saying, I spoke to an ex at a networking event. This role that's just been posted sounds like it would suit his or her skill set. So that's a kind of a great supportive one. It's also integrates with all of the Google Drives and all that.
Yeah, it's great. And the thing is, like, all these tools, they're actually lovely tools. Like, I mean, you can have a chat with somebody, you can say, hey, how are you? But you have to remember that you have to put up your own boundaries. So it's only a positive tool if you actually interact with it in a positive way. So that just means saying, what do I use Slack for? What's important? And I'm just going to mute all the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? And go into it when I have the space to engage with it. You know, and look, as I said, for some people that's once an hour, that's grand if that's your job. Other people it's twice a day, that's fine if that's your job. Do you know what I mean? But just kind of know yourself what your expectation is. Yeah.
What was I going to say about it as well? It's one of the things. Oh yeah, because in some ways you could get bombarded because you probably still have your Instagram and your WhatsApp and all of that. So you just need to make sure, as Niamh said, why are you using it? Why you get like, will you really miss out if you are? You know, it's just to make sure that there is a reason. I know some of the, you know, your friends groups, chats and all that can be gone crazy. So I definitely have a lot muted on the 8 hours during a work day. So then they can fly away in at 6 p.m. And, you know, I don't even notice them coming in during the day if they do. Thank you, Niamh. Now I'll go on to the next one. Zoom, around Zoom. Zoom, which we are currently using, has come under fire because of security issues. What are your thoughts on this? What other video conferencing tools would you use?
Yeah, so I have used Zoom, I've used Google Meet, and I have used Microsoft Teams. And I do think that, I suppose, COVID-19 and the huge flipped remote working has brought out any of the flaws, the weaknesses within the software, right? In a way, it's probably accelerated the security and privacy requirements for all of them. Look, to be honest with you, they all have their own pros and cons. I like Zoom specifically when I'm having workshops because I love the breakout feature. And I think that's really good. But what I love most and what I use most if I'm having a confidential conversation is I use the phone. Do you remember the phone? Yeah, do you know, like that you don't actually have to look at someone's face to have a conversation. So like if you're doing stuff like this isn't sensitive information, so I'm quite happy to do it over Zoom or Meet or whatever. But if it's private, then I still use the phone. And feature-wise, they're all pretty good, but none of them have the breakout apart from this, I don't think. And I love that for having little side chats with Teams. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, no, that's good. Another one actually, and Skype and Skype for Business, and actually
Yeah.
this is one I'll flag for any potential job seekers, because all the job, like I have people interviewing now tomorrow on Zoom. But I myself had a meeting last week and with a client, and you know, accepted and all of that, and then 10 minutes before I went in and realized, oh, it's actually Skype for Business, not regular Skype. So I had to download a new app. So if you are attending an online interview or an online meeting or whatever it is, make sure you do have the software. Make sure you've just played around with it, and you know, make sure that you are set up for that. Yeah, Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, and yeah, you mentioned Google Meet. A lot of the bigger companies then use Cisco as well. But yeah, security-wise, we have been using it religiously for a long time in Employflex, and we haven't really come across any. We've been lucky enough, but yeah, I have heard of some crazy little screen shares of something very random or inappropriate, but so far so good. So far so good. So yeah, I think, and like the breakout features are fantastic. I attended a network event last week, you know, 27 at it, and they were broken out into teams of 4, and that was lovely. It was one of my first time properly engaging the breakout. It was lovely, really nice. Okay, we'll go on to another question. How important is it to have a remote work policy? Do you have one that you can share, or what should be in a remote work policy?
Okay, I am not a HR person, so I'm not going to answer that. But the only thing I would say, as somebody who has done full remote working, partial remote working, is I think the benefit of remote working in normal times is the option. It's the flexibility of being able to either spend time in the office or remote. And I think it's so important when we are remote working to consider our own needs, but also the need of the team overall, and trying to say, okay, are there days that we should be all in together to do certain type of work, and then days that we'll all be remote. So although I'm saying nothing on policy, this is not a policy thing, but my own thing is, I think when companies are looking at it, they should consider the balance. So being able to go out, and then also asking teams to consider, you know, work together to find that works for the team as well as the individual, right? So what type of work we do from home, when does that work, and when should you all be in the office together? And that varies depending on the job, you know, the function, the experience. And just one last thing on this, as well, Helen, is that, you know, a huge challenge that we're seeing now with remote working is skill transfer, a lack of skill transfer, especially from newer employees and then more experienced employees, because they're not in the office together, so they don't, you know, they can't listen in, they can't overhear, they can't absorb. So I do think that there's still a huge piece that can be done and can be gained from being in the office. So it's all about balance. Now, you probably have a better answer on the actual policy thing.
Well, yeah, we do have one, and Karen, earlier actually, we do have a sample one on our website for anyone to have a look at. And we've learned that loads of companies this year it's been kind of a living and growing document, because they're learning themselves, you know. So it's been very, you can see lots of these articles, and you know people are picking and choosing from it. But it is very important. It's going to be part of it now. You know, before I'd say a lot of, before flexible work was probably very much at the discretion of management. And many people, even some of our clients who would have told us even in February of this year, if we said, oh, we could widen the net of the candidates we send you if you, make it, some form of flexibility. No, it's just not possible for this role. And then 3 weeks later, they were all fully remote and working perfectly fine. So sometimes now, unfortunately, it took a pandemic for them to realize that. But so we have one available, very important now. There's a lot of intricacies and there's a lot of legalities there. So check it out on employflex.ie. And there was some good, your opinion as well was good to throw in there for people. Let me see. How important is I'm sure that's supposed to be asynchronous communication for a successful remote work environment. Is that a word you've come across, Niamh? Asynchronous?
Not really in terms of this context. I'll have to think about this. So I think, look, just take out remote work, take out asynchronous, right? Take out everything except for the word communication there, right? I think communication is vital to the success of anything, okay? Whether that's a personal thing, a work thing, whether it's working remotely, whether it's working in the office. And the thing with communication, I suppose, is in our world today, it's very immediate, and it's often very one way, and it's often from the individual, moving their own agenda. So what we often forget is that I suppose we're meant to be listening to understand and not to respond immediately as well. So I think communication is critical to any piece of it, any piece of remote working and anything really that we're going to be looking to achieve. And I think that when we're remote working, taking time to understand the communication needs of ourselves, of our peers and of our teams is vital to make sure that we get the right level, the right frequency and the right mode. So it can't be overstated, the importance of taking the time to think, how am I communicating? And by the way, that's more than talking. It's how am I listening and how am I reflecting as well, Now, I don't know if I answered that person's question.
Well, asynchronous, so it's the opposite of it's the opposite of synchronous. So it simply means the work doesn't happen at the same time for everyone. Asynchronous, so it's I've definitely only heard it. I really only heard of this this year. I think I heard it a lot through Grow Remote actually, and it's multiple time zones as well. So asynchronous communication can be an asset for remote teams, especially if they're all in different time zones, which is a lot of the remote work.
Yeah, so, but then what I say it still applies. So when you're looking at communication with your teams, what's the frequency? Yeah. How is it done? What's the response time? What works for you? But that applies COVID, no COVID. That applies. I was working in EMC, well, when it was EMC, and I was working with India and the States. I was in an office, and that was still an issue. Yeah. So it's all about going back to, you need to communicate what it is a team going to do, and getting that shared understanding.
Yeah. And I think that's it. It's all back to communication, right? And you were talking about just the regular phone as well earlier, because where my husband works at the start in April, May, they were all face-to-face, Microsoft Teams or whatever. And then they made a decision, look, we don't need to see each other all the time. And I think it just was really easy. Why do they? All of a sudden, he said, even when we're in the same office, we don't see each other. We sometimes do stuff over the regular phone. And I think all of a sudden people were consumed by Zoom and video calls. And they rarely do the face-to-face. It's just all, and it's just one other, one less thing to be worried about. It's about getting the work done. It doesn't make a difference what you look like behind that screen. So another one, how do you recommend getting new business as a remote business, finding it difficult to get business to close sales? Have you any advice?
Well, as a young business myself, what I would say, I suppose this is just my own experience, is I'm not trying to be hyper responsive to COVID. So what I've been investing in is building up my own network, my current network, and asking for help actually, just to extend it out. And so that would be kind of a short-term thing that I do regularly, just meeting and staying in contact with people and making sure that people still know that I'm there through smart social media and also actual conversations. But the other thing that I've been doing recently is taking a look at my brand and my service offering to make sure that I'm optimized for online presence, to make sure that I'm communicating with the right people and that they can actually hear what I'm saying, so that they can reach me. So I think it's a difficult environment, but it all comes back to the people. Ask for help, put yourself out there, but also not to be hyper responsive and consider, well, how am I actually coming across, not just today, not just next week, but actually, as a business overall. But it's difficult for sure. Sure, like I used to, like my favorite thing is to get up and talk with people face to face, like standing in front of groups and be like, come on, let's do this. And I'm like in my home office going, hi, I'm on Zoom again. So it's challenging for everyone.
Yeah.
Would you have any tips, Ellen, from what you've seen?
Well, you said asking for help, and we, like, before, you would never say, we've been very honest with some of our clients. We obviously slow down a lot in the recruitment world, and I think people are, we're all human, everyone's had their own little struggle. So we've actually been very honest, and we're saying, look, business, when we got in touch with people back in August, September, we're saying, look, we've done work with you before, business has really slowed down, we'd really appreciate the referral, the recommendation. You were happy with the candidate we placed with you before, and I think, and then the networking online, I think we've no choice to do it now. So it's actually a bit of fun. I attended a court chamber networking last week, and it was lovely to see people that I hadn't seen since maybe last December or January. And using your network, you kind of go through your LinkedIn and you're like, oh, that, for us anyway, it's like, oh, that person's changed role, changed job, and might have new connections for me. I think sometimes there's a lot of potential there right under our nose that we don't realize. So listen, there's a question for me. Advice on remote interviews, please. I have one early next week and nervous. I hate MS Teams. All advice welcome. Really want to get this job. Okay, so start off, make sure you've downloaded MS Teams, do a practice run, test your technology, even just test it with a friend, just set up a quick chat with them to make sure visually you're, blank wall at the back. Dress up as well is important. Wear something bright is actually, I'd say, what was I attending recently? And there was 6 of us in a gallery, and everyone was wearing black and I was wearing a yellow blazer. And may as well, if it's a case of them doing 4 interviews in a row and they're saying, which one was that girl, Niamh, again? Oh yeah, she was one, just a differentiator. We always say as well, you can't smile enough on, you're losing out. There's positives and negatives, right? You're losing out on that rapport and that handshake and that, being able to gauge the body. But then, so smile away, mad. There's no such thing as too much smiling on a remote interview. Remember to dress up. You could be just dressed up here and maybe wear trainers and leggings, but maybe, there's a kind of psychological thing about putting on your work shoes. So I think do that. What else? Oh, there's loads. We actually have some blogs on our website around that, but practice some of your answers. Oh, and the big positive is you can avail of some cheat sheets. I could have a few post-its around here that none of you see, just some triggers, some reminders of some of the bullet points I really want to get across in an interview, and do your research. Nowadays, you more than likely received a Zoom interview or an MS Teams invite from somebody in HR. Go stalk them online, have a look and see what kind of person you're dealing with, what they've worked, it gives you that insight into who you're meeting. And the usual prep for a regular interview: know the job spec very well, know your transferable skills, know the company. Why do you want to work for that? Why do you want to work for them? Have Googled them as well, and also have really good, solid questions for them at the end. Always end that interview on a high point. If they say, have you any questions for me? And you say, no, you've answered everything, that's actually a negative. Another thing, actually, that's very important. And I had some graduates who were doing interviews recently. I was just helping them with some graduate interviews for UL. And I feel like this client actually did this intentionally because it happened to a few people in a row, but there was some technical difficulties, thankfully, on the client side. But I actually think they were throwing them at them just to see how they would react in that environment. Because it happened, and I'm sorry, it was a big company. There's no way they had a little technical hitch. Well, I shouldn't say there's no way, but I'm sure they would have figured it out 3 interviews in. So So that's very important. If there's any issue, if there's any little, if somebody started strimming or lawnmower right outside my window, you'd hear it and I would have to apologize. So it's about keeping your cool and, addressing it, apologizing. And, if you need to take a moment to fix whatever it is. So sorry, that was a very long-winded way, but, remote interviews is the way forward. And remember, they're not massively comfortable doing it on the other end too, remember? So remember always, it's a chat, it's about personality fit. That is the biggest piece of it. Sorry, that was a very long-winded way. Okay, somebody's asked about the Pomodoro technique. Niamh, actually, will you?
Yeah, so like the Pomodoro technique is just a really simple way of managing your time. It suits people who get maybe easily distracted, or if you're trying to break down a task into smaller chunks so that you can get it done. And all you do is you set a timer for 25 minutes. You work for the 25 minutes, then you take a break for 5. And then we start again. And it's that simple. And I think one of the timers is shaped as a tomato, which is why they call it the Pomodoro technique. I know some people who switched it from 25 minutes to 45 minutes because that's what suits their rhythm. But it's all about shorter bursts of activity to make progress. If you're going to do this though, you have to know what you want to have achieved by the end of the 25 minutes, because otherwise you'll just have been slacking and emailing and faffing about for 25 minutes like, oh, it's time for a break. So Pomodoro technique, timer plus goal. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's an app, is it? Yeah, it happens. So it's actually an app.
Listen, you can get apps, but just set your timer on your phone.
Yeah,
I mean, like honestly, there's no need to get drawn into more apps and devices and stuff. 25 minutes, set the timer.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going down to put on the kettle until I do X, Y, and Z. That's
yeah. Or I check my Instagram after I've done it.
So Louise Bunyan, hi Louise. Louise is our LinkedIn expert. She has shared with us that Microsoft Teams are featuring, their breakout teams are coming to Microsoft Teams.
Thanks, Lou.
So thank you for that. So that's perfect timing. Last question now, Niamh. What advice for hybrid teams and keeping people out of the office motivated and included, not feeling left out? As a manager, I'm finding it hard to motivate workers who are working from home full time. How to be fair to those both in the office and those at home?
Yeah, so I actually have something inside my book about this. So it's actually doing a SWOT analysis. And you do it with the team, the whole team. And you consider, okay, what are the strengths that you have as a team, and the benefits, I suppose, of some of you being from home and some of you being in the office. What are the weaknesses there? What are the opportunities that you can derive from maybe individual strengths to actually lift the team? And then there will always be threats to success. So how are you as a group going to counteract them? And then I suppose what I also suggest you do is have individual conversations with both the people who are in the office and the people who are working from home, and ask them, where do they need support? And what challenges do they face? Because everyone is different. So some people actually really like a little bit of micromanaging because it helps them stay accountable, and they need more of that. Others need to, be left on their own for longer periods of time. So it goes back to the communication piece, but don't try to do it on your own. Get the whole team together virtually and say, guys, we're a team. Like, we're doing this together. And just because we're not all in the same place doesn't mean we're on the same team. What are our strengths? And what's really nice is, you can get like your team members to call out the strengths of others on the team. So like your people in the office maybe complimenting guys at home, and that's just so really nice. Positively, let's be honest and vulnerable about our weaknesses, which kind of creates a really safe space for work, and which then allows the team to come together and go, okay, what's the opportunity we have here? Let's make the best of this. And then how are we going to put boundaries around those threats? We're not going to let them impact us. We're going to acknowledge them, but by God, we're going to resist them. And then talk to every single person individually, because you are their manager, so it is your responsibility to set them up for success.
Okay, I like that. I've heard some friends and stuff that work in some larger organizations, and they're kind of they're not happy because it's like a compulsory table quiz, fun table quiz. And some of them, I think, as you said, individually see what support they need. Some of them might be quite happy, it's just to check in individually and see what works for them, or some of them could be quite content, and it's just I think everything comes down to communication, just being honest and responsiveness to that. Cool. I think that, let me see if there's been any other question come in. No, that's it. Niamh, that's been fantastic and our timing is good. So thanks again to Niamh Brady. Go check out her book. It's very affordable. It's Kindle. What's it in euros? I know
like $6.50.
Yeah, bargain. It's actually really, I love it. Just really practical. None of the fluff and some other people who are hopping on the remote work. Niamh's is very, very practical. Easy to implement takeaways. Thanks a million. I definitely have my notes, my takeaways there. Oh, sorry, I think there has been another, there might have just been thank yous. Let's see, just in case. Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So next week is midterm break, and we have decided to take a week off because we're not allowed, many of us who have smallies, we're not allowed to engage in childcare, and yeah, so it might be a bit disruptive next week. So we're going to take a week off, and I can't believe I'm saying the next one then it'll be the 5th of November. Wow. Madness. It's still TBD, so I'm not going to announce it yet. If you have any interest in specific topics, let us know. I'm at jobs@employflex.ie. Yeah, any topics, or we've had some brilliant, actually. Louise Bunyan there, probably one of the really highest attended of the 16 webinars, was excellent. So maybe if she would be so kind to do another one, we'd be delighted to ask her again. And yeah, any other topics that, please let us know, give us some ideas if there's anybody you'd like to hear speak, whether new or you've heard them already, and something, some new topic, please let us know. And other than that, enjoy your day. Hopefully the next 6 weeks flies by, and hopefully we are all in a better place. Even actually by the time we speak in 2 weeks, hopefully there's some form of reduction of those numbers. And again, thanks a million to Niamh. And there's some of the questions there today. There's a lot of answers on our website and our blogs. So, oh, and Louise is giving me the thumbs up. So I'm gonna have to screen grab this. The Louise saying, yes, I will. But no, the LinkedIn, she just has a wealth of knowledge of LinkedIn, and we'll be delighted. So Niamh, thank you so much for your time. Everyone go buy her book, and listen, we'll be in touch again. Okay, so thank you all for your time for the last hour. Thanks, Niamh. Bye.